Do you remember watching the secret ending for Kingdom Hearts 2 and thinking this is a trailer for Kingdom Hearts 3 and it's going to be on the PlayStation 3? Oh boy, instead of getting a sequel which explained everything, we got a prequel which made things even more complicated, and instead of getting a PlayStation 3 game, we got a PSP game. A really good looking PSP game, but still. This is the Retro Cave and welcome to In Retrospect. So, as a PSP game, there was a lot less data to work with. The question then becomes, how do we make this game as long as all the others? An obvious answer is reusing worlds, but that would mean we have to visit each world about 3 times. That's ridiculous. So, let's do it. You play through 3 different campaigns as different characters, this Terra, Ventus and Aqua. Each character has their own strengths, and with that of course also come their own weaknesses. Terra is strong and tanky, kinda like Goofy, and generally is also the easiest to play as. Then Ventus plays most like Sora, being rather quick and agile. I mean, he even has the dodge rule. Last up is Aqua, which is the more magic and defensive based character, more or less the Donald of this trio. Right now I'm describing them as a trio, which might give the implication that you travel with all 3 characters, like you're probably used to in other games, but that's not the case. You choose one character to play through the story, which is ever so slightly different from the others. You visit the same worlds and mostly see the same conflict, but from different perspectives. Usually it goes like this. Terra ends up being naive and helping out the bad guy. Aqua fixes that by helping the good guys, and Ventus mostly just minds his own business and interacts with some side characters. The worlds are rather short though, usually clocking in at about half an hour per world. Some areas you can only reach as certain characters though, like the Castle of Dreams, where Ventus is the size of a mouse. It's pretty much an whole other world than the one Terra visits, which is the castle itself. And then there's examples like Neverland, where Ventus just can't take the boat to Skull Island because the game just won't let you. Then again, I still think this is a pretty good way to make the same world feel different for all of the characters. With the worlds taking about 30 minutes per world, and there being 8 worlds, I ended up playing 5 or 6 hours for each character. Then there's also 2 epilogues added, which takes the total gameplay time to right around 20 hours. A fair bit less than Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, but again, for it being a PSP game originally, really impressive. And then the gameplay itself isn't exactly as you would expect after playing the games that were released before it either. While mashing the attack button still is a good strategy, magic is now a fair bit more useful, as they are no longer spells that take up your MP, but rather they are command decks, a little like they used in Chain of Memories. These commands can be leveled up, merged together to create more powerful ones, and swapped around to try out new combinations. Using specific types of commands also now leads to command stars, which is similar to drive forms, just less overpowered. Then again, you can spam them a lot more, so maybe they are overpowered? Of course that does lead to a couple of decks which are just straight up the best, but it allows you so much more freedom in your gameplay style, and of course this would become the basis for the next couple of Kingdom Hearts games and eventually even influence the combat in Kingdom Hearts 3. Only on 2 occasions do the characters meet up and fight together, and that's at the start of the game at the very first battle, and then about halfway through the game in Radiant Garden. There's a boss fight where you play with the 2 others as your partners, like you're used to in the Kingdom Hearts series. Oh, and at the end of the game also, but let's just say that doesn't go very well. It goes without mentioning, of course, that this boss fight is present in all 3 storylines, and this is also where you start to feel some conflict between the characters. They're not all after the same thing anymore, they've got their own goals which ends up dividing them. This conflict between them and how it grows is done really slowly and subtly, and honestly, it's brilliantly done. You need to play all of the storylines to understand the big picture of what's going on, and honestly, you might want to play them all a second time after completing the whole game for the first time. Having 3 different characters comes with some very legitimate issues of what order should I play them in? And while it's possible to play them in any order you want, generally it is advised you first play as Terra, then Ventus and last Aqua. This is for a number of reasons. Firstly, that's the difficulty scale. Terra's story is the easiest, whereas Aqua has some legitimately difficult boss fights. It's also the best way to experience the story. Playing as Terra doesn't spoil a lot of Aqua and Ventus' story, whereas playing as Aqua pretty much tells you everything about Ventus and Terra. And last but not least, when you finish all 3 stories on Proud Mode or Critical Mode, or 100% a game on Normal Mode, you get the 2 epilogues and you play as Aqua in those. So it makes more sense to end with Aqua and go into the epilogues rather than ending with Terra and Ventus and then going back to Aqua. This game kind of serves as an origin for the series. It's funny, it's an origin story which sets up an even more origin story about the Keyblade War, which leads to Kingdom Hearts Key, a prequel, to a prequel. Anyway, you see how these characters set in motion the events for Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, and well, everything in between that too. Which makes this the point in the series where the story gets somewhat deeper, or should I call it convoluted? Let's say that's mostly a matter of perspective. We learn about Xehanort's past, which goes way back before Ansem the Wise. This also starts a trend of, well, we told you this before, but actually it works differently. Like how Ansem wasn't really Ansem, but Xehanort wasn't really Xehanort, and then in 3D, well, we'll get to that next week, I suppose. Oh, you just wait for that, it'll be fun. Then again, in this game it's done rather well, as you figure out things during the story instead of them all being told to you. We meet a man named Xehanort at the start of the game, but that makes no sense. This is an old man, and we know Xehanort split into a Heartless and a Nobody at a younger age, which Sora both defeated. Keep in mind that at this point you don't quite yet know this is a prequel. And how could this be Xehanort if it's an old man? Well, as it turns out, Xehanort steals Terra's body and in that way ends up becoming the young Xehanort we know from Kingdom Hearts 2, which splits into a Heartless and a Nobody. So this guy gets turned into this guy, which becomes these guys. Yeah, believe me, later it gets even more complicated, but for now, this is pretty insane already. And now there's even theories that in Kingdom Hearts 3 we might find out this rabbit hole runs even deeper. We also see our good friend Maleficent back, and we get to hear how she even came up with the idea of controlling the Princesses of Heart. Spoiler, it's because of Xehanort, just like everything in the whole series is. Also, Terra helps us steal a heart, but then Xehanort explains it wasn't Terra, but... You see why people get confused, Nomura? Yeah, they're turning Terra into a bad guy if you couldn't tell already. This gives us not only a backstory on how Maleficent started gathering heart, but also gives us a look at the princesses that weren't in Kingdom Hearts 1, which is a nice touch. Seeing as how this is a time before the first game, there's also a lot more people with Keyblades, all of which end up either dead or gone by the end of the game. But damn, I've never seen so many Keyblades before. Which should give a lot of opportunities for interesting Keyblades, right? Well, all characters start off and end their stories with a unique Keyblade. Terra even gets 2 Keyblades at the end. All the Keyblades you get in between from every world are the same for all of your characters. I mean, they wield them differently, like Ventus, he wields his Keyblades backwards. Still, I don't know why, but I guess it's cool, alright? Of course you're watching footage of the HD remaster of the game, not the original version, and while the PSP version looked amazing for its time, it just doesn't compare to the sharp models and textures used in this version of the game. Then again, world design isn't impacted that much by resolution, and that's done very well. Even though the worlds are rather small, they do feel alive and, once again, distinctly unique and recognizable. Where Kingdom Hearts 2 might have been the best game as a whole package, this game certainly feels a lot more bright and vibrant. All the way up until the end, anyway, where shit gets really dark really quickly. Of course, visuals are one thing, but to set a mood you also need music. I'd say that's actually even more important than the visuals themselves. And while this soundtrack doesn't hold up to the same standard as Kingdom Hearts 2, it would be a little unrealistic to expect that. Instead of a 10 out of 10, this game has a 9 out of 10, maybe an 8 out of 10 music. In other words, it's still pretty fucking amazing, and of course it's all re-orchestrated for this HD remaster. So in retrospect, this game isn't a PSP game because I couldn't find the PSP game case. This game isn't what we expected it to be when it was first released, but that might have actually been a good thing. It explained a lot of lore and introduced a deck command system which all modern Kingdom Hearts games almost use, and in general just gave a new direction to the series as a whole. I'm not even gonna say I recommend it, that should be obvious. This game might not be perfect, but I have played and recommended much worse games before.